Hey guys, I'm Tom the Tech Chap, and for the past week or so I've been using this guy. It's the new Huawei P40 Pro Plus. And, well, it's a lot like the P40 Pro, but with double the storage, 512 gigs, this fancy new ceramic white or black design, and it supports faster 40-watt wireless charging. But the headline feature is this penta-camera setup. That's 5 lenses, including 2 optical telephoto lenses, a 3x and a 10x, which you can then pinch in all the way up to 100x. So this is directly taking on the S20 Ultra with its so-called space zoom. So the camera setup on this is pretty exciting, but before we get into all that, let's talk about the price, because the Pro Plus will cost you about 400 more than the P40 Pro. In Europe, this will cost you 1,400 euros, which I expect to be about £1,300 here in the UK, which is an awful lot of money. Although, to be fair, it's still 100 less than the Galaxy S20 Ultra and 200 less than the iPhone 11 Pro Max when you spec them with 512 gigs of storage. Anyway, putting price to one side for a moment, let's talk about the real selling point of this guy, the camera. Now originally my plan was to make a P40 Pro Plus versus S20 Ultra camera comparison. I actually took a bunch of photos side by side this week, going through all the different lenses, all the way up to 100x, but I was then told a couple of days ago that 2 more updates were coming and it could improve the camera, although I don't know to what extent. And I'll hold off on my full long-term review as well as my camera comparison video until they're available. So by the time you guys actually can buy this at the end of June, it should all be fine. So let's break down what we actually get, because Huawei are calling this, let me check my notes, the Ultra Vision Leica Penta Camera System. Bit of a mouthful. Here are the specs, including a main, ultra-wide, 3x optical and 10x optical lens, and a time of flight sensor. So it's largely the same setup as the standard P40 Pro, but now the 5x telephoto has been dropped down to 3x, and then we get the new 10x lens. So what you can now do in the camera app is go from 0.7x with the ultra-wide lens, to 1x using the main lens, then up to 3x optical, 10x optical, all the way up to 100x. Importantly though, unlike Samsung, who just whacked this huge space zoom logo on the camera module and made it one of the key selling points of the phone, Huawei aren't making such a big song and dance about it. Yes, you can zoom in up to 100x, but it's the quality of the 3x and 10x optical lenses that really makes this stand out. And actually, they kind of solved one of the problems that a lot of brands are facing in terms of what level of zoom do people actually want. So for example, the iPhone gives you 2x, the OnePlus 8 is 3x, this S20 Ultra gives you a 4x optical, but with this, we get the best of both worlds. We get a mid-range 3x and then a long-range 10x. So it covers all the bases, of course at the expense of, well, costing an awful lot of money. And then around the front, we have the same 32 megapixel selfie camera and depth sensor. Nothing new here, but it's still one of my favorite front-facing cameras, particularly once you turn off the beauty mode. But altogether, there's no denying the versatility of this camera setup. Yes, the ultra-wide isn't particularly wide compared to other phones. I still find the UI and the process of zooming a bit finicky, and it's very, very expensive, but at the same time, the fast focusing, great low light shots, impressive HDR, and the crazy zoom options, this is one of, if not the best phones for photography right now. Of course, the camera is only one aspect of the phone, and like the P40 Pro, I think it's a beautifully designed phone, and actually it's kind of like the Goldilocks in terms of size. At 6.58 inches, I think it feels just right in the hand, not too big, not too small. Now, not everyone will be a fan of the 4-sided curved screen. I think a lot of people do prefer flat screens now, and also the hole punch cutout is one of the biggest I've ever seen. Although to be fair, I do appreciate we're getting an IR sensor, which makes face unlocking in low light much faster. Also, it's still disappointing that even on a flagship phone like this, we only get a single speaker at the bottom. As for the ceramic material, well, it does look good and it's certainly eye-catching in this white color, but I'm not sure if I actually don't prefer the sort of matte glass, the silvery color on the original P40 Pro. Which one do you think looks better? I mean, they're both stunning, but kind of like the matte finish. Pretty much everything else though is exactly the same as the P40 Pro, with the same Full HD Plus 90Hz screen, Android 10 and EMUI 10.1 software, the Kirin 990 5G chip, 8 gigs of RAM and a 4200 mAh battery. It genuinely is very nice to use, and EMUI has come a long way in the last few years to make it more responsive and also give you more customization options. Now you could argue that, a Full HD Plus screen, 90Hz refresh rate aren't exactly flagship specs in 2020, but then again, the iPhone is still at 60Hz, although when the iPhone 12 comes out later in the year, that'll probably fix that. But actually, given the size of this thing, Quad HD wouldn't really make sense, although maybe 120Hz would have been nice, but I think Huawei's done a good job at balancing performance with battery life. By the end of a normal day, I still have about 35% of the battery left. So far, so good then, but I think for a lot of people, despite having an amazing camera and a really nice design, all that good stuff may fall by the wayside because we still don't have Google Play services and there's no Play Store. Honestly, it is frustrating. I mean, Huawei's investing a lot in their app gallery, so it is improving, but right now it's still missing a lot of the important apps that I use. Now you can still get most of the apps you use through Phone Clone, which brings them over from your old phone. And then you can use something like APK Pure to fill in the gaps with nearly everything else. But it is frustrating, and I do worry about the security of the apps that you may need to download through third parties, particularly for banking and shopping. And as good as this phone is, I just don't know how many people, in the UK and Europe at least, would be willing to pay €1,400 and deal with the app situation just so they can get this camera. But I also know everyone's a bit different, and if you can find the apps that you use on the app gallery, then that's great. And if you don't mind just putting a bit of time into either, downloading APK, sideloading stuff, or going through the fairly lengthy process of actually getting the Play Store on there, but Huawei doesn't recommend those things because, well, it's all kind of like unofficial and not really protected. So really it comes down to you and also what apps you use. I mean, personally, I've got things like, Facebook, Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, BBC News app, Lightroom, so quite a few things, but then again, it does miss out on YouTube. I've had to create a browser shortcut on the desktop, which just isn't as good and not something you really want to have to do on a €1,400 phone. But despite this, it really is a lovely phone to use, and the camera, while I'm still holding off for some updates before it officially launches, is a real selling point. Now the question of would I pay $400 more for this over this? Well, personally, no. I don't think the upgrades are worth that kind of money. Double the storage, faster wireless charging, this new design, and the slightly rejigged camera setup. All nice to haves, but not something I think I would pay $400 extra for. But it is good to see Huawei continuing to innovate with their camera tech. So this has just been my sort of 1 to 2 week first review. But make sure you have subscribed so you don't miss out on my camera comparison, and also let me know what you think of the P40 Pro Plus. Are the extras worth the higher price? And is the lack of the Play Store a deal breaker for you or just an inconvenience? Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time right here on the Tech Chat.